This week on Quality Digest Live, should you move at the speed of innovation or at the speed of your customers?
Plus, knowledge management in ISO 9001-2015. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for August 14th, 2015. We're bringing in a new director nowadays, and we're just bringing him up to speed.
Yeah, inexperience.
Experience. We get these interns.
Yeah.
So this is
you on air if you keep this up.
Quality Digest Live for August 14th, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, you are, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. All right, well, most of you in the Quality Digest audience right now work in the manufacturing sector, and many more than most of you, in fact, are, like Dirk and myself, a human being of the male gender. That makes sense because currently women make up just 27% of manufacturing workers against 47% of the workforce overall. But that may be changing. According to a recent survey jointly conducted by Deloitte, the Manufacturing Institute, and the Apex Supply Chain Council, women are increasingly entering manufacturing, and organizations that understand this and pivot accordingly can expect to reap great benefits from this underutilized pool of talent. The survey, titled Minding the Manufacturing Gender Gap, How Manufacturers Can Get Their Fair Share of Talented Women, collected information from 600 women who are currently working in the manufacturing sector. What the survey uncovered was, by turns, intriguing, disappointing, and hopeful. And none of it was really actually surprising. And I want to show you some of the results that came from this because I think it's interesting. There was a lot of good data that came from the survey. So let's run through some of the points that was revealed in the survey. More than 67%, that's more than 2/3 of respondents, indicated that they would stay in manufacturing if they were to start their careers today. Around the same number, 65%, said that their company does not have an active recruitment program to attract potential female employees. 73% believe that women were underrepresented within their organization's leadership teams. 77% stated that performance standards are higher for women than they are for men. 51% have observed a positive change in the industry's attitude towards female workers in the last 5 years. 24% would fully endorse, and then 42% would partially endorse or endorse with caveats a manufacturing career for their daughter or another close family member who happened to be female. So overall, you can see that from that data, it's rather mixed bag, I think, Dirk. The opportunities for women in general in manufacturing, I think, are improving, but there's really still a lot of major hurdles to overcome. I think to improve, companies should emphasize reaching out to potential female employees and work within their organizations to challenge perception about women in leadership roles and the gender disparity among performance standards. As always, starting the conversation is hard, but it's a necessary first step to lasting change. What I meant by that was that whether or not there is actually this disparity, or whether there is just the perspective that there's disparity. I mean, the data will prove it out in each individual organization, whether or not there are an underrepresentation of women in the leadership positions, or whether there are different standards in practice for women versus men. They're held a different standard in terms of operations in manufacturing. Whether that's true or not, if there's a perception that it's true, you need to address it. I think that this idea that you want more women to be in the workforce in manufacturing, you need to make your company friendly to women. And you need to talk to people, both men and women in your organization, to find out if these things are happening. And again, whether they are or not, whether it's provable or not, you need to address the perception that it's going on and understand why that's there. And if it's a misperception, you got to correct it. If it's really something that's going on in your process that's a problem, you need to correct that too.
And as you were going through that piece, it reminded me, Thomas Cutler in Quality Digest Daily, Quality Digest Online, had a series of articles that were interviews with women leaders within I think one company or maybe two different companies. Very interesting, and basically their perspective on women in leadership, how they got there, and do they feel that companies are doing enough to to mentor or to provide a path for women to leadership roles. So if you're interested in that topic, if you go to our website, go to the search bar, type in Thomas Cutler. I believe it's the last 2 or 3 articles by Cutler that actually deal with this very issue, and deal with it actually via Q&A with 3 different women in leadership positions. I believe one of them is a VP as well. So pretty interesting reading.
Yeah, definitely good stuff.
Okay, well, speaking of surveys, Milwaukee and San Francisco saw the highest percentage growth in manufacturing jobs over last year, according to a new analysis by the statistics firm Wanted Analytics. Wanted compared hiring data, including job ads from April to June 2015 for 350 U.S. metropolitan areas. The Milwaukee, Waukesha, West Allis, Wisconsin area saw a 33.5% increase in manufacturing jobs over the same time period last year. San Francisco saw a 26.5% increase, and Dallas a 16.7% increase. Chicago and New York also showed double-digit growth. Now, well, Milwaukee is home to about 118,000 manufacturing jobs, according to the latest census data, and San Francisco is slightly higher at about 124,000. So how does this data break out in terms of specific industries and specific jobs? According to Industry Week, industrial engineers and first-line supervisors of production and operating workers saw the highest number of new jobs. Occupational growth was the highest for medical scientists, a 16.1% increase over last year. Computer user support specialists were also in high demand with an 8.1% increase, and I believe computer user support specialists are what you would call your online customer support people, I believe, is what they're saying.
Yep.
And so there's actually no real surprise that there was a growth there. And for those in our industry, there was a significant rise in skills related to good manufacturing practice and quality systems, so good news for us as well. So in terms of industries, job growth was significant in electronic computer manufacturing at about a 24.4% increase, soft drink manufacturing at 16.1%. Soft drink manufacturing jobs up 16.1%.
Crazy.
I think there's a message in there. And surgical and medical instrument manufacturing at 12.9%. Aircraft manufacturing showed a 5.4% increase, and semiconductors a 9% increase. So all in all, actually a positive sign, except I don't know about the soft drink manufacturing thing. I mean,
how about a Fresca?
Thank you. Well, actually, speaking of that, do you know, I had to look this up, do you know how much soft drinks the average American, how much soft drink beverages the average American drinks in a year?
The average American?
In a year.
I don't know, 300,000 cubic tons.
Close, that's just what they weigh. No, 44 gallons. That's
44 gallons.
That's about 16 ounces of soft drink every day per person in the United States.
But in all honesty, seriousness, I mean, 44 gallons, so how many tablespoons of sugar?
Oh, I know.
A lot of sugar.
Yeah. Do the math on that. And also, well, in coffee, by the way, about 11 gallons a year.
So 4 times as much cola, soft drinks, as coffee.
And I drink about 11 gallons just before lunch.
Coffee, yeah. Or soda.
I get a really clean cola.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, good for you.
In case any of you were interested. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's great. And it's interesting you say that, Dirk, because the next story has the term moving in the title. I don't know how you knew that. You're Mr. Segue.
Master of Segue.
Are you moving at the speed of innovation or at the speed of your customers? That's right, I'm sorry, Annette. That was written by Annette Franz-Gonecki. That article appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. That's going to be the first feature article we're going to cover today on the show. Well, that's the title of the piece, again, by Annette Franz-Gonecki. And Annette, of course, as we always refer to her, is a customer experience expert. She does a lot of customer journeying. She talks about how you're handling your customer throughout the
right, and she writes has the customer experience blog, CX blog.
CX journey blog, yeah. So that's really what she focuses on. Well, this question, the one that she addresses here, is really central to the idea of how and why organizations develop new products and services. And it boils down to whether or not you believe that customers know what they want and need, or if they need to be basically told. And there's a couple of quotes that are well known in this space, and people always refer to them. The first one, of course, is by Henry Ford, who said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said, Faster horses, right?
Faster horses.
Right, of course. It's a great quote in retrospect. And then Steve Jobs, of course, of Apple, late Steve Jobs, said a lot of times people don't know what they want until you show it to them. And he was talking about that within the perspective of focus groups. So it's hard to derive from a focus group what people want and what products you can develop. You have to know what they want, you think, read into that, and deliver it to them. That's with Steve Jobs' perspective on that. Well, those quotes really, I think, represent the prevailing wisdom in the industry today, and a lot of people, think that you need to do what Ford and Jobs did, and a lot of people think they can do what Ford and Jobs did, but of course not everybody is Henry Ford or Steve Jobs. Glenecki, as a customer experience expert, as you would well imagine, has a slightly different take on this, and she refers to a couple of different sources that I think underline the point she's going to make here. The first one is the 2015 Edelman Trust Barometer, which is it's a survey that basically asks consumers, what they trust, how they establish trust, and what they believe in. So it was interesting that within that survey, the 2015 survey, most believe that the pace of business innovation is too fast, and it's driven mostly by corporate greed. So they don't really feel that when they're asked honestly in the form of a survey about innovation, about new product development, they don't feel that those companies are developing the products for the right reasons, for what they need, or to advance culture, or to make things better. They're really just looking for more money. And again, to refer to Apple, I think is the case for this. People maybe come out with those new iPhones quicker and quicker and quicker, the new generations of the i whatever. A lot of people say, well, heck, I don't even really know the features and the benefits of the one I just bought 6, 8, 10 months ago, and now you have a new one, right? And people feel like it's just too much. Many people feel like it's just too much. Later, she quotes an author by the name of Michael Schrage, who believes that customers' so-called internal readiness, quote unquote, is all importantness. And he says, and a quote again from the piece, their inertia matters more than your momentum. What he means by that is that their sense of whether or not they're ready, their inertia, they're being comfortable or satisfied with what their experience is with your product or your service right now, is more important than you being excited about what you're going to bring forth next. I mean, we're all excited about what comes next. Innovation is what a lot of people get into these industries for, is because it's exciting. It's exciting to come out with a new product. It's exciting to come out with a new service, that is going to change the industry, is going to be disruptive, or whatever the case may be. But you have to think about what those customers actually want, what their inertia is, and how you move them off of their inertia maybe, and how you begin to cultivate what you can do and marry that up with what they want. Now, of course, we talked about innovators in this piece, the beginning of the piece, the innovators of Henry Ford or Steve Jobs. And some of those innovators really have great vision. And they have terrific brand names too that they were able to build or they build off of when they launch these new products. They may be able to drive customers through their great innovations to their product line. And maybe they can. Maybe the rest of us, though, need to mind the voice of the customers. And the other thing about this is, with Ford and Jobs, I want to point out these guys in particular, they were geniuses, right? But maybe their genius wasn't so much that they just birthed these great new products. Maybe their genius was really interpreting the subtle signs that were coming from the customers, that weren't even overt, that weren't even able to point to and say, well, with anything better than our customer would have wanted faster horses. Well, yeah, but maybe you think about that and you say, well, what is a faster horse? Obviously if a horse has got a certain limit, so what would that look like if it was something mechanical? Or, this idea that these guys, that these great innovators just birth this stuff out of their brains without really taking the voice of the customer into account, I think is a little bit of a misnomer. I don't think it's an either or. I think that it's a combination of the two, and the really, really great ones, somewhere in there is this idea of what the customer wants, and somewhere in there's this idea that they're going to serve them that way based on what the customers have implicitly or explicitly stated they want.
And sticking with Ford for a bit, we talked about this last week, and kind of dovetailing off what you just said. We think of Ford as an automobile manufacturer, right? But Ford has kind of reframed what they're doing, right? And they're looking at they're mobility experts. We've got people who want to get from point A to point B.
Right.
Well, a car isn't necessarily always the best way.
Yep.
So Ford is expanding their vision. It's like, okay, so we've got a lot of technology, we've got a lot of expertise. How do we leverage that into the idea of mobility, which may be something beyond automobiles, something other than automobiles, or something that is automobiles plus something else? And I think that's what you're talking about, is they're tapping into that customer, and customers saying, oh, we need a car.
Right.
Well, what customers are really saying is, no, I need to get from home to work. And I'm just used to thinking in terms of a car, but maybe there's another way.
That's right. I mean, you were used to thinking in terms of a horse.
Right, exactly,
There's another way. I mean, there's a continuum of this innovation, and these companies, again, I mentioned branding is a big part of this. A company like Ford has built up enough trust, has built up enough of a name over the course of more than a century now, where they can do that. They can say, well, this is what we think, and this is where we think that the market is going, and their customers are going to tend to give them more slack than people that are just coming out with no name, no brand really at all, and coming up with innovation. So branding is a big part of this too, but I again, and that would emphasize, and I would agree with her, that the voice of the customer is still all important here. I mean, you really need to, in some way, distill what that need is, whether you intuit it from their behaviors, or you find that out from a focus group, or whatever it is. You need to have them as part of the equation to innovate, or else you're not really going to have a model that works.
Right. Now, sticking with the idea of innovation, part of innovation within any company is knowledge transfer. You know, you've gathered all this information, you have information about your customer, you have information about your products, and making use of that information is part of what knowledge management is really all about. And in his article, What's Really New in ISO 9001 2015, Knowledge Management, author Arun Hariharan takes a look at knowledge management as a strategy as opposed to a set of tools. But before we get into that, let me give you kind of an abridged version of Hariharan's definition of what knowledge management is. He writes, it's an integrated set of initiatives, systems, and behavioral interventions aimed at promoting smooth flow and sharing of knowledge relevant to the organization and the elimination of reinvention. Knowledge management seeks to facilitate the flow of knowledge from where it resides to where it is required to achieve the organization's objectives. So very often when we think of knowledge management or talk of knowledge management, we really think of it in terms of how you gather and disseminate that knowledge, kind of the technical aspect of it. What tools can you use? And sometimes these aren't even technical tools, but management tools as well. But Arun asks what we can do with knowledge management from a strategic perspective, and how do we align it with our company's overall strategies. My interpretation of what he's saying is, if we're going to spend time and money on gathering and sharing knowledge, shouldn't we make sure that we are focusing on the right knowledge? And he outlines a common sense 8-step framework to do this. First step is the knowledge management vision. You want to link your knowledge management efforts with your broader organizational priorities so that you can focus on sustaining the results. The knowledge you are working with should tie into what is important to the company. Second, knowledge management strategy. You need a system that provides employees a single window, a single view to all relevant knowledge and expertise from within and outside the organization that is relevant to their domain. So what we're saying is, in the first step is what is important to the company, and the second step, taking out of that, what applies to what I do. He suggests a method that he developed called 360-degree knowledge management. There's a link to that in the story. It's pretty good, common sense actually. I don't know if you linked out and read that, but it's really kind of a common sense methodology of kind of what knowledge management, how you would implement it, how you would go to it. Okay, the third step in his framework is leadership. So of course leadership needs to identify organizational priority areas, align them with the knowledge management efforts, define performance measures, and so forth. You also need to put the right people in different knowledge management roles, and that is also, of course, where leadership comes in. It's their job to do that. Kind of the fourth step in the framework is people, roles, and structure. And this is just what it sounds like. What roles do different people play? How is the knowledge shared? Who are your knowledge experts? And so forth. This is a key part. Knowledge comes from people, so people need to be involved in your knowledge management effort, of course. And as reader Dirk Van Putten commented on the article, Van Putten says, quotes, "Organizations don't have knowledge, people do." That's right. So of course, if any knowledge management effort, you've got to tie in the people who have the expertise. The fifth element of Hariharan's framework is culture or change management. Hariharan lists several elements to this change management, but I think the most important are the first two he lists, which is number one, organization-wide culture of knowledge sharing and copying of best practices, and number two, uninhibited flow of knowledge or information. So if you think about this, knowledge is power. We all have heard that expression, knowledge is power. And I think one of the most difficult things for a person or a department or a silo to do is to share their precious information. Nobody wants to let go of that information. It feels like you're giving up power when you give up that information that is unique to you. It gives you a sense of power and in a sense of, well, everybody has to come for me to the answer. But that doesn't work really. And I think building a culture where sharing is a willing operation, where people view it as good for the company and of course then good for themselves, this can be a big challenge. And I think that is really a big effort in a change management or culture management effort that has to go on within the company. Get people to let go of that knowledge. The rest of the items, this fifth step, kind of support the first two, KPIs, rewarding knowledge sharing, leading by example, and so forth. Okay. The sixth step in Hariharan's framework is knowledge management process. It is only now that he begins to address technology issues, kind of the how of sharing. Standardized processes for knowledge sharing, replication, and identification of best practices, online knowledge sharing platforms, standard formats and templates for knowledge sharing and replication, measuring and publishing of the results of all your knowledge management. These are all kind of technology oriented. Notice, he hasn't gotten to this until way down in his framework. Step 7 of a knowledge management framework, measurement of knowledge management results. Well, of course, this is just what it sounds like. Data analysis to see if you're hitting your knowledge management key performance indicators and what that means to your progress. And finally, in step 8, he explicitly addresses technology and lists off several examples. And really, it is at this point, I think, that you take a look at what tools are on the market and how they fit in with the first 5 steps we've talked about. How can you pick a tool? How can you choose a tool to use if you don't have a good feel for what your strategy is and what you need to approach that strategy? So you need to see how they fit in with the first 5 steps. Every company's knowledge management approach will be different and most likely involve different tools. So if you have gone through and understand and begun to implement the first 5 steps, you are in a much better position to choose the technology that makes sense for you. So a good piece by Arun, very common sense in my mind, but sometimes you just need someone to state the obvious.
Yeah, it's the same thing as always. I mean, it's always about the culture first before you implement the tools, right? And the high level stuff really needs to be put in place. Once you understand the high level stuff, you can do the other stuff pretty easily. The other thing about that, which was interesting to me, was this idea of silos. And as I thought about that, and as I read the article, and as I thought about you getting into it a little more deeply here, I thought about, what are silos? What really is a silo? And a silo really is what you said. It's this holding tight to the knowledge, to the information, and it's the specialness of your data, of your own secret sauce that you know how to do this and nobody else in the organization does. That's a silo. That's how you define a silo. And it's not some physical thing. It's a perspective. It's a greediness with what you know.
Right.
And we talk about breaking down silos. Breaking down that and sharing that information is a really big part of it.
Well, because part of maintaining knowledge for a lot of people is a sense of job preservation.
Sure.
Well, my job is secure if everybody has to come to me. If I've got to share all my knowledge and everybody knows the same thing I do.
Why do they need me?
Why do they need me?
Yeah,
and there's a security issue involved in that. And I think it's hard to break through that.
And managers need to break through that. I mean, managers need to make people see the bigger picture. Again, culture before tools. You need to see the bigger picture of why you're doing this, why you're sharing this knowledge, so that all of us can do better work. Bigger work that's more strategic rather than really tactical work. A great piece by Aaron. Very well-read piece by Aaron.
Yeah.
A lot of you read that one.
A lot of people like that.
Yeah, so good. Thank you, Dirk. All right, well, Dirk, now, if I were to tell you that you were average.
I'd say my wife would disagree.
Okay, well, what would she say?
Below average.
Well, okay. Well, then there you go. You just answered your own question. What would you think about that? Well, what if I called you normal?
Right.
Or not, I'm not talking about your wife now. I'm talking about what would you feel if I called you normal? Well, now, what if I called you non-normal?
Abby normal.
Abby normal. I knew her. No, if I were to call you non-normal, what would you think? I mean, you'd have
I'd be insulted.
I would imagine you would be, as well you should be. Well, all these terms and a lot more have meanings and emotional charges in everyday use. They also have discrete and generally far more neutral meanings, almost entirely more neutral meanings, in the world of statistics and statisticians. And as pointed out by Eston Martz, author of 10 Statistical Terms Designed to Confuse Non-Statisticians, which appeared in Monday's issue of Quality Digest Daily, those different meanings can cause lots of trouble when non-statisticians right here try to make sense of, or God forbid, attempt to edit statistical writings.
Our apologies.
We're sorry. The problem is really very understandable when you think about it. The problem is that the world of statistics is, by its very nature, extremely precise, right? I mean, that's what statistics and statisticians are all about.
Yeah.
It's very
Plus or minus.
That's right.
3% margin of error.
Well, yeah, we're not polling here, but yeah, it's a very precise industry, right? And it's much more precise, in fact, than the world that the rest of us live in, and the definitions are much more precise. I mean, go back to this. Take a phrase like normal, okay, that we referenced earlier. For example, or non-normal. For a statistician, these terms merely mean whether or not data is distributed according to that familiar bell-shaped curve, right? That's every statistician knows, and most of us know the bell-shaped distribution of data. Data that is not distributed in this way is considered to be non-normal, but that doesn't mean it's bad data, right? Very important distinction there. Data is data, and statistical analyses are devoid of emotion. There's no bad data. Human beings, however, are anything but devoid of emotion. Normal, to most of us, means okay, right? It's something that's normal, it's regular, it's expected, it's good. Thus the connotation that something that's non-normal is strange or unexpected or bad, right? It's a connotation many of us make. Now, statisticians don't think in these kind of terms about their data, and that's where anyone who works closely with them has to be really careful. Misunderstandings and forced connotations like this can cause situations to be very terribly misrepresented when the data is communicated either upward or downward in the organization. When it's communicated downward, workers can think that things are bad again when they're not. On the other hand, when they're communicated upward, management can make some really poorly informed decisions based on a certain connotation that was never intended by the statistician who assembled the data. Now, how about another one? Bias, okay? Term bias. In the statistical world, bias simply means the accuracy of measurements taken by a particular tool or a particular gauge as compared to a reference value, right? I mean, that's pretty cut and dried, right? Well, for most of us, bias refers to inherent judgments that we make based on preconceived notions that may have, in many cases, built up over the course of years or decades. Calling someone biased is a highly charged accusation. So when non-statisticians hear about measurement bias, he or she may tend to get his or her hackles up, and maybe they're going to want to dispose of the measurement data altogether. Hey, it's biased.
Right,
you know,
right.
why would we want to make decisions based on a bunch of biases? That sort of thing. I mean, this happens. You know, it's kind of funny, but this really happens. And to me, this whole idea that Martz is talking about is fascinating because he starts off in the world of statistics and he very quickly crosses over into the realm of psychology and how people interpret things and how they bring meanings to things or shadings of meanings to things where they may or may not be there. The reasons why these terms and the others that he identifies in the piece, he actually identifies 10, so you should read the whole thing. But the reason why all those terms are used and misused become clear, and hopefully all of us can take a step back when we hear these phrases to think about what they mean, what they really mean in the appropriate context of statisticians. And the bottom line is that all endeavors have their own special language and jargon, but few of us, or few can be so easily misunderstood and with such far-reaching effects as that of statistics. So I think it's important that you bear that in mind and ignore that advice at your peril, because you can really foul stuff up pretty significantly if you take your common everyday usage of certain terms and apply them to what a statistician might be telling you.
By the way, you said statisticians or statistics are not emotional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
Put two statisticians in a room and throw a question at them, and we'll see how emotional they get.
Yeah, ask a group of 10. Ask a group of 10 whether you should transform data or not, and then lock the door and leave them in.
Yeah.
See who comes out.
Throw that question there. Should I transform my non-normal data to normal? Yeah, and then
lock the door.
Lock the door and leave.
And leave.
See who survives.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's emotional, but
bring a mop when you come back.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right, we're coming up to the end of the show, which means that it's time for our Tweet of the Week.
Tweet of the Week.
This one comes to us from Lucid Meetings, quoting 1st century BC writer Publilius Cyrus, who said,
yes,
anyone can hold the helm when the sea is calm.
Ah.
There we go.
Is that true? I don't know. I mean, but can't you still crash your boat even when it's calm? I mean,
sure, you keep it on a calm sea headed directly at shore.
I mean, you know.
You can hold the helm.
So Publilius Cyrus, I guess he was serious about that.
Yeah.
But
84 BC.
84 BC, thank you. Okay, so that's 2,100 years ago. That's still valid. All right, thank you, Publilius Cyrus. I'm serious. Okay. Well, thank you, Dirk. Thank you all for being out there. That is our show for the week. We're at the end of our half hour. Another great week of Quality Digest Daily coming up for you on Monday. A ton of great stories. And of course, we'll be back here on Friday with Quality Digest Live, and we'll be recapping those stories for you. So, Dirk, have a great weekend. All of you have a great weekend.
You too.
And I guess we'll see you next week.
So long.
Bye.